I was gonna wonder if you find that in some of the preliminary conversations, if there's a reservation from people and being like open and honest because of a fear of, if I tell you my goals and dreams and they're not aligned with the long-term vision or future of the company, that's a career limiting move, and that's going to mean I'm going to get fired for it. And obviously, like, that would be a really like short-sighted, foolish decision from a company perspective. But I think that fear, like, it is something that like innately exists with people.
Well, and there is like that inherent kind of slight conflict of interest being an in-house coach, where you hear things where you're like, okay, I am hearing this as your coach, not as the director of people and culture. And there's definitely been times where I've had to say, would you like us to transition this conversation to a HR conversation? And they'll say yes or no. And sometimes
Right.
it goes in this direction and sometimes it goes, but I have to check in and ask them and
Fair.
reassure them, look, what we discussed is confidential. I'm not going to go and share that. And if I hear something where I'm like, oh, now I'm torn, I will absolutely ask permission. If I feel like, what, this is something that I think somebody else needs to hear. Are we okay with that? Yes or no? If they say no, then they say no. And that's, it's in the vault. There has to
Yeah.
be trust. Because when it comes to those sorts of coaching relationships, if you don't have that trust and confidentiality, you're done. Like, you can't break that person's confidence. And so, yeah, it's definitely an interesting dynamic.
I think that ties like a last really great piece into the value of internal HR and having somebody like in that role who can have those conversations. Because, for my business is a small business where we don't have an HR like team member yet. We're not at that size yet. Like, I'd love to be having those conversations, but I know it'd be very much different having it with, the owner versus having it with the HR person, which is, one of the things I often advocate for, especially with the small businesses as they grow, is like the value of HR and how HR is different than even talent acquisition, how your HR can do both. But really, I view it as like the heart of the business, like that check-in, that feelings, that people, and really that piece that sometimes maybe as owners or in small businesses where we can't necessarily, fully wear the hat the same way, that checking in with your people and really understanding that third pillar of the employee experience, things like this that you guys are doing is such a critical piece. And you might not be able to do it the exact same way, but there are always pieces of that you can take out, those kind of, the 5 values you have and how you live them, and how they're not just, a poster on the wall. Like, I laugh, I remember going into a client meeting once and saying, what are your core values? And they were like, oh, it's a good question. And they were on a poster behind them. And it was like, oh my God, like, they're right there, but clearly they're not, like, they're just things that like a consultant came in or something, right? Yeah, it's on the wall. Like, what's your mission? And they're like, I think we're like trying to make a change. And it's like, well, all right, but it's great to hear that you guys like really live them, and then you give those additional supports. And I think it truly like ties in all 3 pillars, and having a really strong foundation to be able to build on, being able to go to market with a really strong go to market strategy, and then truly like setting people up for success and creating opportunities for growth and for openness. And those things are the things that create retention. You can't like force it. Technology, information, it's way too much now. People have so much in front of them. It's only through, like, I think how you show up as that leadership team, as HR, that creates that like desire to stay.